In November 2023, I released a video game called Knuckle Sandwich. It's an RPG set on a fictional island off the southeast coast of Australia. It blends turn-based combat with microgames similar to WarioWare or Rhythm Heaven. It has a huge cast of characters, a massive soundtrack, and an absurd story with a focus on humour. Overall, most people really enjoyed playing it. I received many heartwarming messages from fans who connected with the game, and I managed to build a community around it that supports me and my work. Knuckle Sandwich has enabled me to have a career in this industry. I'm incredibly proud of it. So that was almost a year ago. As much as I didn't want to admit it, I knew I needed to take a break before I got started working on another big project. But at the same time, I also knew that I couldn't just sit around. So since last November, I started a game studio called Dinko with my wife Olivia, and we released a really tiny video game really recently called Electric Fairyland, and I've also started helping as producer on Surf Club, which Olivia is the director of. All this to say, this video right here is the start of the super official Knuckle Sandwich developer commentary. I've been planning to do this for a while, but I wanted to make sure I had some distance from the project first. When you've been working on something for so long and you've been putting so much of yourself into it, you get all these weird, complicated feelings. And I know my mood was really up and down as I was getting close to finishing the project. So this video is going to include the entirety of the prologue and chapter 1. I want to make sure there's no stone left unturned, so I'm going to try and include as much behind the scenes footage and information as I can. Let's begin. Okay, so before we get started, I think we need to establish some ground rules here when we're talking about the prologue, because that could mean a number of different things depending on the context. So like we could be talking about the prologue that was included in the demo from the Kickstarter 6 years ago, or we could be talking about the demo that was released on Steam a couple of years ago as well now. We could be talking about the prologue that was part of the demo shown at PAX years before the game came out. We could be talking about Tarantula, which... Nah, I don't think we're talking about that. Honestly, I think I just got to rip the Band-Aid off. It would be unfair to start anywhere other than the Flash game. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting. So Flash has been long gone for years now, with modern browsers no longer supporting it. Earlier today, I cracked open my ancient laptop from over 10 years ago that I used to make video games on. I thought maybe there'd be some way I could get the source files together to be able to properly run the Flash game, but no luck. I then decided to look for a Flash emulator online, and tried a few, and eventually found this one. Here it is. So, 10 years before I released the full version of Knuckle Sandwich, I was working on a Flash game of the same name, this game. Even though Chapter 1 of Knuckle Sandwich is lifted straight from this, I think of them as entirely different games. Look, I think we just jump straight into it and you'll probably get what I mean. Hey, sorry to interrupt. As you could probably tell, this was lagging and just not running correctly. No matter what I've tried, I can't get it to work. And also, I think this is just a much older version than wherever it ended up because a bunch of the art's different. Just some stuff's displaying incorrectly. There's like some debug stuff on the screen. So I just don't think it'd be fair to play this, like, because you don't get the full idea. But fortunately, I figured out a solution. Back in 2013, I was asked to be a last-minute participant in a panel at the Free Play Independent Games Festival here in Melbourne. The idea for the panel was to talk about a game we were currently working on. I had started Knuckle Sandwich a few weeks prior, so I decided to show it off there. I remember I was still fixing parts of it on the train that morning. Luckily, Barch, who ended up doing some of the music in the final release, was able to record my talk. Anyway, let's get back to where we left off. So, hang on. So yeah, it's pretty one-to-one with how things end up in the final release. I think the biggest takeaway is that it's not a turn-based RPG at this point. I'll get to that at some point in the future. We're not quite there yet. The Flash game never ended up doing that. But first we got to talk about this next part. I want to be sitting here and trying to defend the sort of thing I'd make now and be like, oh, I'd never do this sort of thing now. This old game is cringe. But the thing is, like, I thought it was funny at the time. I thought it was cool. Like, whatever. If you can look at something you made in the past and you can say, hey, that's cringe, I wouldn't do that now, that means you've grown as an artist, right? But no, like, really, it's the Flash game I think is really cool. It's like truly a product of its time. I wouldn't make anything like it now, but that's not to say it's bad. It's just, I want to make something else. I want to make something new. We're done with the Flash game, right? Like, I dropped it a couple of months into working on it. It wasn't really a thing. I eventually decided to start turning it into a big proper game. Let's talk about that. When it came to making Knuckle Sandwich a big game, I didn't necessarily sit down and think like, all right, let's plan this out. Let's see where it goes. I literally just used the Flash game as a base. The Flash game itself, it was, as we know, quite small. The whole game went by this core loop of you work in the diner doing some task like feeding customers or cooking or whatever. Then you'd go out the back and you'd fight some guy. You would eventually, they'd be turned into food, blah, blah, blah. You'd go home, you would have a sleep, you would have this like dream minigame sort of sequence, and then you'd just repeat over and over again. It was meant to be seven levels, like all the diner, 7 days, I suppose. And eventually it ended with the boss kind of getting, like, the police turn up, there's like a big monster, you fight him, you kill him, that kind of thing. Yeah, kind of boring if you ask me. It felt like it would have outstayed its welcome after about like the 3rd day or so. But that was the base. Moving ahead to what it did become, I feel I already had like a style set, I had like I had the base, I made this logo. You can see it's it says so much. It's like, it's gritty, it's colorful, it's like, there's a lot, like, it's very in your face. This might not be applicable to people who didn't live in Australia in like early 2000s, late 90s. Wait, I need to pull this up. We need to watch this together.
Wild child.
So like Rage would be on like early in the morning on the weekend. It's like music videos. It's like, I guess, like our MTV or whatever. Actually, I've never really properly watched MTV. I just know they played music videos. But anyway, that's kind of like the vibe I went for. Both with like the logo, but like also the presentation in that. I feel you can kind of see that going on. So like, let's put that over there. Let's get these guys out of the way. I just want to also make one note about logos. Or just any sort of branding or anything. When you release, like you announce a project, make sure you're cool with anything you ever put out for it being like represented forever. I had this art made back when I was working on this. Obviously same logo, just different colors. And it's cool, but I stopped using this quite, like only like a couple of years into like the game once I got like the new logo and everything. But everyone, like, this is on so many YouTube videos and articles and everything, so it's cool, but it's not the key art. Keep that in mind. If you make something, people are just going to use it if they like Google you. I'm pretty sure if you Google Knuckle Sandwich or like Knuckle Sandwich game, this turns up. I don't actually know what the inciting incident was to make the game a RPG, like a turn-based RPG. I think it's just like I liked them. And at this point, I was like, all right, I know how to do this. I can go through the first couple of experiments. We had this. It's like, one, it's widescreen, which I hated. I very quickly was like, no, 4:3 is the only resolution any game should ever be. It doesn't need to be widescreen. It's just really busy. The background didn't have like a floor yet. It was just very much like the Mother 3, like Earthboundy kind of backgrounds, but just way too bright. So that was that. It was literally just turn-based attacks, nothing too fancy. And then I started looking into doing like special attacks that had like animations and stuff, which was kind of cool. We also had these transitions, and this is like another one of those things where, like, again, there's just too much color going on. There's just too much everything going on. These enemies are scrapped because Nintendo, like, pretty much put them 1-to-1 in, like, Miitomo or something like that. And then, oh yeah, this is the Vance fight. Yeah, eventually we got this. We got, like, a different character. And, like, this is pretty much the same background that's in the game now, just different colors. You can sort of see this evolution here. I was still playing with what the main character looked like for quite some time. There's still a camera that moves around quite a lot during this. I think the camera, yeah, like when you try and run, it would drift away. Not into that. Let's see what the bees ended up turning into. Yeah, so this was the bees. And, like, yet another character design. This one was really cute. I liked how he, like, pointed his thumb. And the bees are pretty 1-to-1 as well. You can see as well, I, like, made the menu, like, have... It's very much more, like, in the battle, which I think is really cool. And that stayed like that for pretty much the rest of the game. It just only got a few minor tweaks. Last thing I also did was, like, working on how other characters would be in the party, where they, like, spin around. It used to be a thing, like a little carousel of, like, 4 characters. It got too busy, though. But you can sort of see here, this is where, like, the game gets a bit more of its identity to where it ended up. I messed around so much of what it would look like as a turn-based RPG, and eventually got there. I, like, put a floor in, so, like, you're not just, like, floating in the void. You get, like, shadows and stuff like that. The backgrounds got toned down a lot. So many of them are just, like, purple. Still very colorful, but just not in your face as much as some of these other ones were. So I think it's safe to say this game, like, was just really iterated on over time. Like, I just never really stopped working on it, developing its style, that kind of thing, which is really cool. I think you can kind of see this evolution as you play the game, really from start to finish. But anyway, back to this point in time, I was pretty happy with the direction it was going in. It was really just about getting the word out there. I had shown, like, an incredibly early version at PAX Australia. A friend of mine literally just cut a booth in half and gave me a side, so I got people playing the game. I just really want to see complete strangers play it. Sans Undertale was there. I started going to a lot of events. I made, like, these, like, stickers and stuff like that to give out. It was really just about getting the word out there in any way I could. Yeah, I went to, like, the itch party at GDC. I mean, I went to GDC first, but there was, like, an itch.io party there. I just showed the game there on a laptop. I showed it at another party here. It was really just making sure it was just in people's minds. I was emailing, like, press and YouTubers and Twitch streamers and stuff like that, just being like, hey, you don't even have to, like, I'm not trying to get you to play it on stream if you don't want to, just remember me, you know? I think one of those harsh truths that you find out that, you know, and it's not meant to sound mean, but it's, if you're just starting out, if you're just making your first, like, big game or whatever, no one really cares. Like, that was true back then, and it's true now. Like, obviously people, like, you know, can be like, yeah, cool, and, like, think it's exciting and that kind of thing, but, like, you really have to work on it. You really have to make people care, or, like, show them why they should care, I suppose. If they're not going to care, they're not going to care. That's the truth. But anyway, the biggest adjustments between the Flash game and what eventually became the main game were the turn-based battles and the fact that I added a prologue. I did initially like in the Flash game that it would just throw you right in, but being a bigger game, you kind of want to be eased into it, right? So we added the prologue, which eventually became the, you know, moving to town game show stuff. These images are what the version that I was sending out before the Kickstarter. These were that. It's pretty 1-to-1. Again, it just ended up looking better. After that, there was the updates to the diner. It looked like this initially, like what I was sending out to people. Again, pretty similar to what we ended up with. Still had the kind of I don't want to call him uglier, but just, like, the much more, like, stoic, stone-faced, like, almost personality-less protagonist. Well, he had a personality, but, like, just a different one. This is when the game was still a bit snarky, I think. And you can see the battle here. It's, again, pretty close to what we ended up with. This wasn't the initial version that I was sending out, but pretty close to it. I don't actually have anything. Like, I couldn't find anything. And this is, like, another one of those lessons. I wasn't saving a lot of this stuff because I was like, well, who's going to care? And I guess in the grand scheme of things, like, it's, you know, it's not like there's people, like, knocking down my door trying to find
what this initially looked like, but it would be nice to be able to show it here. So, if you're ever making something and you're iterating on it and you do any major changes, just keep it in like a folder somewhere, because it'd always be nice to go back on, even if you don't end up finishing it. Like, it's cool.
But anyway, we're getting dangerously close to talking about the game itself now. I think the only thing that's left to go over before then is the Kickstarter. When it comes to the Kickstarter, there really isn't too much to say, honestly. I feel it's pretty self-explanatory. I didn't have the funds to work on the game full-time, so crowdfunding made sense, right? I think to give a bit of context, though, going into it, I had been working on the full version of the game from the end of 2016 right through 2017. I was showing the demo overseas at GDC, like March 2018. I had been talking to a few press and like other people there, and they kept asking like, "Hey, when's the demo coming out?" And I was like, "I'm gonna do it next month." So I kind of forced myself to have like a deadline, because I was really stressed about doing this, which I think isn't like an uncommon feeling when you do something like crowdfunding. Like, it's a bit of a leap of faith, right? But the thing is, like, I really wanted to smash the goal. That was just something I really wanted to do, which of course everyone would want to do, but like I didn't want to do it unless I knew I was going to, which might sound a bit arrogant, but like I'd been building such an audience. I had like, a heap of like as far as like numbers go for followers and stuff like that, like it was looking pretty good. I was like, yeah, I think I can do this. Like, I just had no idea though, right? I was lucky enough that people who were like fans of the game, they just on their own made a Discord server for it. And I hadn't really been using Discord at the time, but I came across this and I was like, whoa, what? Who are these people, right? Like, I didn't even know a bunch of them. I didn't know any of them, actually, truth be told. So that was really cool. Seeing that there was like a following for the game, it made me like feel pretty confident in that I would be able to reach this goal. I launched it at like 2 a.m. my time and woke up and it was funded. That was really, really cool. And then obviously like it went well above and beyond the initial amount, so I'm super grateful for that. If you're one of the backers, thank you so much. It really does mean the world to me. But anyway, I'm not really going to go too much over this. There's not really that much to say. Like, truthfully, you can read it yourself. I'll put a link to this in the description. I think some fun stuff though that I want to go over. First things first, let's watch this together. After I decided to start using Game Maker to make it a big proper game, I got together with some friends and I rented a photo studio and we recorded this really, honestly, over-the-top video for what it was. I had actually been planning the Kickstarter for quite a while, but like back then I thought you could literally just like put it up online and it would work out, which it cannot. Do not do that. Back then it wouldn't have worked, and I think now more so than ever it just won't work. So yeah, I took a lot of time to plan it out. And like I said, I wanted to make sure it would work, definitely. Like, it had to work. So yeah, it took, honestly, a few years of just working on the game and planning it out and that. And as you can see here, it's kind of this weird hybrid of a Flash game and where it ends up. And it's still widescreen. I can't agree with that choice, honestly. But anyway, this video, it is really cool, even though it's so outdated that I ended up using it as like a weird announcement for the announcement a week before the Kickstarter officially launched in 2018. So yeah, I just wanted to show it in its entirety here, just so I made this whole paper mache head and I got like fake American money. It's over the top. But anyway, that's that. And then we can move on to the next thing. Let's set the scene for the Kickstarter launch. I'd gained a following online thanks to showing the game a bunch at places like PAX and GDC, as well as having a bunch of journalists play the demo, and just posting the game online as well. People were into it. I had that new Discord server where, again, people were amped up. It was like a small community of like really active participants. And I had just posted that trailer saying there's going to be Knuckle Sandwich news in a week. People assumed it might be the demo, or it might be a Kickstarter, or it might be a release date. It was a Kickstarter, obviously. And so, as I said, I launched at 2 a.m. my time. I wake up and it's funded. I go for a walk in the park nearby, and afterwards I'm like, yo, the world is truly beautiful. What do I do next? I release the demo. Leading up to this, for that week after that trailer and the announcement, I decided to have some fun with this, and I did something very, very wild. The Knuckle Sandwich ARG. Shout out to Josepho for compiling all this data back in the day.
I'm going to leave a link to this because it's like 30 something pages, but the long and the short of it, each day I would post like a weird little cryptic online game where you could like decipher codes that you could then input somewhere to then find another code. And you could also go digging through a bunch of web pages via the newsletter where you could find information as well. So lots of weird little word games here. I thought back then that people would be able to like decompile this and find the information out without having to solve the key, but I didn't realize how easy it was. So halfway through this, I started actually hiding fake keys as well that you couldn't get unless you decompiled it, and people found them. So I was like, man, that sucks. It used a lot of weird websites and codes like Tumblr pages and Twitter pages that I made up. Swordfish became like a little bit of a thing in the community because it was a big part of it. Yeah, lots of stuff. There was like a weird like mini blog I was posting, like in universe. Yeah, all these NeoCity pages where like people started linking in like my friends' pages that were like they could find links to, which is kind of funny. I had nothing to do with it. It was just there. All classic ARG stuff. It was like half planned, half winged it, which made it kind of fun. But the prize for this was as soon as people figured out the final code, I released the demo there and then. I love this image as well. Wait, I'm doing this live. Sorry, I'm messing this up. Okay. Yeah, good image. Going back to the Kickstarter, I decided no to stretch goals. That was a really big thing for me. I was like, I don't want to add any more to this. I don't want there to be an incentive. Like, if it means people stop backing, then that's fine. I don't want to like overpromise, you know? But like money still kept coming in, which is really good. We hit like 200%. I did a AMA over on Reddit, which was really cool. And I think there's some fan art here because I did like a fan art contest. Or maybe it's on the next page. It might be the next page. Is it here? Yeah, okay. So I had some really cool fan art made. There was so much cool stuff. Like 2 weeks after doing the Kickstarter, I also went to Kyoto and showed the game at Bit Summit, and that was really, really fun. First time showing the game in Japan. Fun fact, these vines are like still in our luggage, like parts of them. We just keep finding them whenever we travel overseas. Never got rid of them. And then, yeah, the project was funded. Really, really cool. And yeah, you can see here the final amount, 326%. So again, if you're a Kickstarter backer, thank you so much. Really, really means the world. After this, I pretty much just kept working on the game. I think down the line, I'll probably comment on like specific stuff that happened sort of between that point and the game being released. But as you can see, I did some pretty thorough updates along the way. I think down here, yeah, Knuckle Sandwich is out. Let's talk about it. Here's the thing. I had already recorded this. I did like a live playthrough of the game, kind of like a let's play of chapter 1 and the prologue. I had like this little frame, this little circle up in the corner. It was great. But because I wasn't watching the video footage as I was recording, I didn't realize the camera had turned off, and so I was frozen in place. Like I was like this. It was a very dynamic action pose. You won't get to see that, obviously. I'm doing this again, but I just thought you'd like that little behind-the-scenes info before we get started. Speaking of, let's hop into it. I had locked in this as the first scene where you assume control pretty early on. I just wanted something really isolated, and also that looks quite visually different to pretty much anywhere else in the game. Honestly, I love this little opening scene. Adding the car was like maybe something I did like a year or so before I released the game. Maybe even 2 years. Like I wanted it so that like the character would walk on the screen, then turn towards you, and that's when you start playing. Here you'll see I'm doing what's like a lot of people's like I would assume favorite joke. Something I really like when I watch streams of the game is people in the chat telling the streamer to like try and leave in this area. They're like, no, try and leave. Like before they go and sit down at the bus stop. This was also decided pretty quickly. I love the idea of actually being on like a moving vehicle and having it kind of like fade in. I don't do that like I think anywhere else in the game, but it's really cool. Something that's really disappointing actually about this though is to make sense of the shape of the bus.
bus driver's actually on the other side of the vehicle compared to where he would be on an Australian bus, but it would have made it a bit too annoying to work out with the depth and everything. Which is, yeah, just one of those things that kind of annoys me anytime I think about it, but I just try not to think about it. I actually have the game checked to see if you've done that joke before in the bus stop area. When it comes to this area, it actually got a big overhaul between the demo that was with the Kickstarter and what was in the final release. It was just because I watched a few people, like quite a few people play it at like PAX and stuff like that, and they were actually confused as where to go. It wasn't super obvious. So like I continued on this trend that you see throughout the game a lot where you start at like the bottom of the screen and you have to like work your way up to get to the end goal. They do that a lot. This guy's like one of my favorite, just non-specific NPCs. Just because his tax evasion line, I love that. This guy would get like, he'd get a laugh out of people who played it at like festivals and cons and stuff like that. They felt very seen. I really like that. People always told me, like, they'd come up to me and be like, I like that bit. So I'm happy with it. My favorite thing about this, I changed it from the start where you have to like, it triggers if you just walk in front of him. But then throughout playtesting, it was found that you could like sneak around the job center sign. So I had the game acknowledge this. And Protag's like moves at double speed, which instead of like doing the run animation, which was a bug, but I thought it was really funny. I had some people ask me about like kind of the inspiration behind these guys and their, why they talk this way and everything. This interaction here is almost one for one a conversation I had with a guy who like owned a gym up in Sydney like 10 years ago. I was in a florist and I was just like waiting in line and this guy just started talking to me much like this. It was something else. It really stuck with me. So I was like, I got to do something of that with my life. In the original version of the game, you actually had to like wait a set amount of time and it was really bad. My recommendation, which should be obvious, but my recommendation is never do that. It's so stupid. Okay, this is like the one of 3 jokes that I would gauge if someone liked the game if they laughed at this, if I got like an audible chuckle out of them. So there's this one. There was the one with the guy who's like playing the game and then they turn and look at the camera. And there's one more a bit later. I'll tell you which one that is when it turns up. Really fun fact here. The like 4 sound effect that 4B makes, if you like are mashing through the text, it'll actually do a high-pitched 4 at that point. Like if you mash fast enough, it'll go 4. There's a bit of trickery involved in this scene. So when the camera like moves up to go to the host, you are actually shifted down. So when it moves back down to you, it actually travels down further. I don't know what effect that achieves, but I like it. The imagery of all the jelly babies watching you silently is like my favorite. I love the look of this scene. If it wasn't obvious, I suppose it isn't obvious to people outside of Australia, but the job centre is meant to be Centrelink. And these jobs that you're offered are really ridiculous. Like, intentionally. Like, obviously, it's part of the absurdity of the game. When I first moved out of home, I went looking for a job at, like, one of those sort of places. And they just kept offering me the most far-out things that definitely you needed experience for, that I didn't have experience for. And it wasn't like it was, like, some traineeship or anything. It was ridiculous. And it was always, like, on the other side of town. And I didn't have a car at the time. It was just a mess. So this was directly inspired by that experience. The time I was showing this at, I think it was PAX East, And this guy came up and he was like, he called me over while he was playing this dancing minigame, and he was like, "My guy, I play DDR every single day. This isn't hard at all." He sounded exactly like that. And I was like, okay, dude, fine, it's chill, like whatever. He did get to the diagonal parts though, and then he messed up, so I don't know if that's on him or if that's on me. This is one of my favorite little visual bugs. If you look at the game show host's eyes, he can sometimes get stuck on the wrong frame, and he's just sitting there like he has his eyes closed. I really like it. Like, the first time I saw it, I was like, I'm not going to fix that. It's really cute. It's like he's malfunctioning. I went over a few iterations of this shoot 'em up scene. I figured this control scheme comes up a lot in the minigames, so I wanted to make sure that all the weird little mechanics about it are taught like immediately, because I kind of have this philosophy when it comes to like shoot 'em ups where if there's no reason for you to not be shooting all the time, then you should just be shooting all the time. So there's two things that go on here. One is that you move at half the speed while you're shooting. So it's kind of like you shoot, and then if you want to quickly get out of the way, you stop shooting and you move. The other is you have this like reload kind of burst sort of mechanic where if you just hold down the shoot button, eventually the rate of fire goes down dramatically. But if you keep like tapping over and over the shoot button, you can just get like these really fast little bursts. And it feels much more dynamic that way. So I'm pretty sure that stays consistent throughout the whole game, which is really cool. Just for this scene in particular, I wanted it to just kind of feel really out there immediately. So it throws a lot at you. A secret about how it works is that the hands always shoot, but the body parts like the eyes and the nose and the mouth, they won't start shooting until you've hit them a few times. So it's actually optimal to like try and focus on one. Of course, it's really hard because they move around, and then the head itself is moving around as well. But yeah, really happy with that. Really, really happy with how that little game turned out. So originally the third job that you'd be given was writing about video games on the internet. And it was kind of like, not a jab, but it was just, in truth, it was just so journalists would write about the game. So I was like, haha, I'm making fun of you. It felt almost a bit mean-spirited, and I figured I'd just make the joke. Punching down at myself, I suppose. Honestly, it's one of those things where I've seen this so much, it's like not even remotely funny to me anymore, but it's fine. I will say though, that to me, like, I don't know if anyone finds this funny, but every single mini game area you walk into from this, like every job, you walk left off the stage and then you'll be like starting on the other side of the screen. Whereas here, I made it that you just start in front of a rock and like you face the rock, and it looks so silly, but something about it just made me laugh a lot. This minigame was pretty much here from the get-go. I think this one didn't change too much from like the original idea. I just wanted to get the player used to walking around the map and just kind of interacting a bit. I figured there's many mini games that do this where you walk around and press a button. It's just like a nice little game. I'm really into the music that plays here. I think Jim's did a good job of this little tune. This battle's really hard to lose. Originally it was like pretty possible, but I wanted to make sure that players actually like got a level up through this. So it's very scripted. Like you have to be able to hit them. It always forces you to, and it'll always KO the bee when you use fight. And then the next two, one will always do the original attack, and then the other one will always do a mini game. This one's so good. The long neck is so silly. I'm really, really happy this is like the first proper minigame you get to see. And this is where the shoot 'em up training from before comes into play. Yeah, not that easy. to lose here. I think even at some point you actually stop taking damage if you go too far. I like really reined it in. But that's a tutorial fight and I'm really happy with that. I think I want to leave this scene play out. I like bookending the start and end of this chapter with coming back to the bus stop. And there's nothing you can do to progress this scene. Pretty fourth wall breaking here. All you can do is interact with the new flyer that's on the ground. Just a fun fact here, I wrote this using a mouse with my left hand just to make it extra scratchy. And with that, we're done with the prologue. Pretty solid if you ask me. In fact, if I were to personally rank it amongst all of them, I think we could put it in a solid A tier. Solid chapter, sets up the game well, introduces you to the world, the main character, and a few of the other main players, gives you some intrigue. I'm personally pretty happy with it. I think it'd go here. Okay, with all that out of the way, before we start with chapter 1, I just want to talk about something else quickly. Thanks to our friends at Fangamer, we have this incredibly in-your-face Knuckle Sandwich t-shirt available. It's printed on this really cool purple tie-dye. We got ours in the mail, and I was pretty impressed. I think my favorite part of it, oddly enough, is this white contrast stitching. It honestly contrasts pretty well compared to the rest of the design. If you are considering picking one up, I will just say that it runs a little bit smaller than I was expecting. Usually with t-shirts I'll wear a medium and they fit me quite well, but this one was a bit smaller than I was expecting. But again, your mileage may vary, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, thanks again, Fangamer. Hopefully we can do some more cool collaborations in the future. And alright, back to the video. And we are jumping straight into chapter 1. Fun fact about the title of this one. When I got my first job working in a restaurant, I was asked if I knew how to clean windows. And they're like, there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do it. They were being like really dramatic because I was like, it's just cleaning windows, whatever. And they asked me to like show them how to do it. And so I did. And they're like, guess you only know the wrong way. And so I thought that was really stupid and really petty, but I liked having that as part of the chapter title. The double toilet was inspired by this double toilet that I saw at a restaurant once. I think there was like a pretty popular meme about this as well, about like another nefarious double toilet. I'll see if I can put it up on the screen. I feel like I got to talk about the significance of the Big Biscuit here. When I was working on the game, there was this vending machine I'd see all the time at the train station, and inside it, it had this giant biscuit that I've never seen before, like this off-brand giant biscuit, right? And it was like this big. And anytime I'd have like a night out, I'd always threaten anyone. I was like, I'm going to buy it. This is the time. I need to get this big biscuit. I never did, but it just felt so iconic that it had to make its way into the game. Oh, this thing here. So whenever people playtested the game, or just played it like at an event or something, they would go and read all the signs and everything, and they'd walk down to that thing and like try and inspect it, and it never said anything. And so it wasn't meant to be anything. I don't know what it is, but that's why when you inspect it, the game's like, oh. Oh yeah. This whole area, this whole room is like the most like fine-tuned area in the game. Another thing people used to do is walk up to the bell and keep hitting it, expecting something to happen. So I made it the alternate trigger for the boss appearing. One time I was watching the streamer after the game came out, and they were like really pissed that the boss teleported. But truth be told, I just didn't want to animate him walking around. It looked silly. I like how the random nature of the plates appearing means you sometimes get patterns like them all leaning at an angle, like that one down the bottom just before. So truth be told, I had tweaked this minigame so much, and I could never get it quite feeling fun. I think even this final product isn't actually like... It does what it needs to do, but it's not that good, right?
But it's never really meant to be. It's just meant to be like a fake game. It's meant to be like, all right, this is what you'll be doing now, and then the game does a bit of a bait and switch. I actually made it like pretty late in the game that you could just run around during it, so it's actually pretty easy to brute force. I figure because it only appears once, you know, people, their first time seeing it, they wouldn't really know what's going on, but you can see here I just kind of let it, like, a few guys appear, let some burgers stack up, and then you can just like run, and even if you mess up, it's not that hard to solve. Yeah, like I bump into people, I keep going to the wrong one. It's fine. It all works out. I even like cut the time down. I think it used to be like twice as long, but it's just meant to like simulate a game, you know? And look at that, like an A rank. Something that's not noted is you can actually get an S rank if you somehow in that time like get it perfect. It doesn't do anything, it's there. Just so you know. Something that's really funny about this is that I put all this effort into this like little bespoke animation for getting an item, thinking I would use it throughout the game often. But truth be told, there's not that many times you're given an item like how you're given this knife. So this is the only time this happens. Which, again, makes it funny if you think about it. After the demo came out, people quickly found out you could like actually dodge this cutscene by continually trying to move away, and you'd move like 1 pixel at a time until you got to the door. It was really funny, but it did break the game, so I had to fix it, unfortunately. That used to be just like an item stuck there, but then again, people kept trying to collect it, so I made it that you actually could. One of my favorite tiny, like, non-specific things the game does is actually like the story of this soup. Like, so you can first inspect this sign here, and it says like we sell soup and other things, and then later you can inspect the soup behind the counter, and Protag like expresses disappointment that it's just canned soup. It's not like, you know, fresh homemade soup or anything. And there's like a few other soup related things you can inspect throughout the game, and it does nothing. There's no achievement, there's no secret item, there's no nothing to it. It's literally just flavor text, but it's one of those things that makes like a game feel alive, which sounds so silly. Like it has nothing to do with anything. It's not some big deep thing, but it's just, I think being able to reward the player with, you know, them being curious and trying to find the stuff out, it's cool. It makes them feel seen. It's the kind of stuff I appreciate when I play games. And so if I can do that for others, then that's cool. That's like a net positive, right? I love that sort of stuff. It's like fourth wall breaking, but like not, right? It's still all within universe. It's not like turning and looking at the camera and like pointing at you or something, but it's rewarding you in a similar sort of way. So that stuff's really cool, if you ask me. I don't know if this ever really translated as a joke to anyone, but like I put that little rubbish bin in that spot specifically so that people would likely try and move to it first, and you know it falls over and makes this really like deflated thud sound. To me, it always makes me laugh. Okay, here it's not really a secret to anyone anymore, but to unlock challenge mode, you have to throw away the knife before this confrontation. And it triggers a bit of different dialogue, and then you don't even do any sort of like build-up tutorial kind of fight here. You just jump straight into a fight with Mystery Man, and he has souped-up attacks. I will say, challenge mode itself is like a bit of a slog, and that's intentional. It's meant to be quite, well, I mean, challenging. It's in the name, right? I think it's actually a funny thing where the first couple of bosses are the hardest, and then it does get quite a bit easier once you unlock like a bunch of the other characters, like their co-workers and that, to be in your team. This one, not so much. This one's just a bit of a skill check, but the Vance and Sweet Nothing are quite difficult, I would think. Once I kind of got this style down, it didn't really deviate too much. I just kind of added stuff here and there. I was always a big fan of the crime background. That was inspired by Space Funeral, where it's like there's a guy called the King of Crime, and he's like smoking, and he's got like the smoke spells out crime. I just think something about it's so funny.
There's also a funny little thing here where if you're not holding a weapon, both their hands like touch when Mystery Man goes to attack, and I think that's really cute. Late into development, I gave him this attack, Frighten. It's just kind of like a generic debuff attack. I just thought it was cool to give him some variety, and it's good to get him to do something on turns that isn't strictly damage, I would think. Mystery Man, to me, despite being, you know, only seen like properly for this chapter, he's referenced in pretty much every chapter of the game in some way, or he appears, or like his theme song appears, that kind of thing. And I think it was really important to me to make sure that like the protagonist is like always thinking about this, like, and showing that, because obviously he doesn't have like an inner monologue or that kind of thing, but it's like always on his mind. Or if like some character says something that makes him think of this, he'll like even have like his face change where he's like looks off and he looks a bit sad. To me, that was really important. Like, obviously this is the turning point, or like the inciting incident, I suppose, for him. So it was very important for me to keep coming back to this. Like, and because of that, it's like Mystery Man's one of the main characters of the game, despite having limited proper screen time. So this was actually like, this little bloody animation was meant to happen for like all the bosses, but very quickly I realized, wait a second, I don't want them all to die. Like, some of them were actually just straight up meant to like go away, and like I was like, okay, it's fine for them to die, but to me it was more interesting to actually let them live and have them come back later and have them do other things. So it makes Mystery Man's fight a bit more unique here, where like you kind of get really locked in, you're in the zone, and then suddenly this happens and you're like, wait, what? Because like, you know, RPG battles, obviously in like a real life setting, like you're not actually taking turns trying to hit each other or anything, right? Like RPGs are just meant to be like the gamey kind of version of what's happening. So it's funny that like you'd be like kind of in the zone with that like while you're playing, and then suddenly you cut back to this, you're like, oh, right. A little gag here that I really like is like 2 like meat patties are put down on the fryer, and like I guess the implication is that he's going to cook 2, but he doesn't actually bother cooking one for protag, so like it's just left there, and I think it'll actually go like it'll get burnt and go black after a while, which is just really funny. He's like, nope, just for me. Protag's face here is always makes me laugh. Right before showing the game at PAX East, I actually edited Boss's like surprised sprite here, where like, you know, he's thinking like this and then he looks at the camera and his eyes are like bigger, and because of that, anytime I looked over and watched someone see this scene, like I just laugh. It looks so stupid. This little opening animation had changed quite a bit between the final version and what was in the demo. Not really like a huge reason. I think like the first one made it look like the co-workers were evil, which was kind of part of the initial draft, but I quickly got off that. I liked having these like really like scratchy little drawings here though. Another cool thing is that I actually asked like Yo-Yo Games, like the people who made Game Maker, for permission to include the Game Maker loading screen, like the old one. So that was pretty cool. I'm glad they were chill with that, because this always gives me a laugh. And here we get to see the original colors from this logo. I changed it to what they are now because I wanted like the 2 main kind of colors to be like represent Bus Driver and Mystery Man. Oh, also the other meat patty's gone here. I'd like to assume like after that whole scene, Boss just like swiped it and ate it and then ran off. Like one for the road, you know. And that's chapter 1. Pretty good chapter if you ask me. In fact, let's go to the tier list and see where I'd put it. Well, if we're basing it off the fact that the prologue is in A,
I think chapter 1's in an A as well, actually. My only thing is it's quite short. That's the thing that makes it not like where I'm kind of between the two. I'd have to think of where I put the rest, I guess, in context. So like now it's A, but I think it could move down to B because of that. I'll have to think about it more. You know, putting together this video was such a nice trip down memory lane. It sounds so silly to say it out loud, but the start of this game was such a big part of my 20s. Truth be told, the whole game was. So being able to go through old tweets and forum posts and videos and all that, it's been great, honestly. There's so much I just straight up forgot about. And like, we're not even like 10% of the way through the game itself. That being said, this is an hour into a video, so I'm going to leave it there. I would love to, down the line, make videos for the rest of the chapters. So if there's anything you'd like to see in that, or any questions you'd like answered, definitely feel free to leave me a comment, and I'll maybe put together like a section where I can go through that. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching this whole thing. I'll see you on the next video.